I worked night shifts in a dementia ward because it paid better, and most nights were predictable. Patients either slept or wandered until redirected. Room 14 was the only exception. Mr. Havorson never slept. He stayed on his back with his eyes open, breathing steady, staring at the ceiling like he was waiting for something. His chart listed advanced dementia, nonverbal status, limited mobility, and no aggression history. On paper, he was one of the easiest assignments. Every hour I checked on him. Every hour his eyes locked onto me the second I crossed the doorway. The movement was immediate and precise, not slow or confused like the others. At 1:20 a.m., while I was logging vitals at the nurse's station, I heard bare footsteps behind me. They were slow and deliberate. I turned around, expecting to redirect a patient, but the hallway was empty, and room 14's door was closed. At 2 a.m., his call light activated when I entered the room. He was still flat on his back, but the bed rails were lowered. I raised them and told him it was time to rest. His mouth opened slightly, as if he wanted to speak, then closed again. At 2:40, the camera monitor glitched and showed movement near his doorway. When I checked in person, nothing had changed, except the floor felt cold, like the door had been open longer than it should have been. At 3 a.m., I stepped into the hallway and saw him standing in the doorway of room 14. He was not supposed to be able to stand without assistance. His legs were locked straight, posture rigid, hands hanging at his sides. He was facing the nurse's station, like he had chosen that position intentionally. I called his name and moved closer. I felt pressure behind me, close enough to make me step forward again. He smiled in a way that was controlled and aware. The emergency alarm in my pocket activated without me touching it. The lights flickered across the hall. He took one step forward, then another, steady and balanced. I ran toward the exit doors and did not look back. Security arrived within minutes and found him back in bed with the rails raised and his eyes closed for the first time all night. The next morning, while finishing paperwork, I saw his chart updated with a time of death listed at 12:17 a.m., nearly 3 hours before I saw him standing in the doorway. Night shifts in the dementia ward blended together after a while. Same halls, same alarms, same patients wandering out of rooms and forgetting why they stood there. I measured time by medication rounds, not hours. That routine broke the night. I noticed a man sitting in a hallway chair near the supply closet. He was calm, upright, wearing a patient wristband. The name on it stopped me cold. It was mine, same spelling, same birth year. I assumed it was an error and told him to stay seated while I checked the system. His file already existed. Admitted 3 years ago. Progressive cognitive decline. Assigned to night supervision. No visitors listed. The photo looked like me, just older and exhausted. When I stepped back into the hallway, he was standing beside me. He asked how long I thought I had worked there. I said 5 months. He smiled and said that was always my answer. He followed me through rounds without being told to. He stayed close, but never touched me. He pointed out which patients would wander, which alarms would fail, and which doors staff forgot to lock. He knew the ward better than I did. When I asked how, he said you learn patterns when you stay long enough, around 4 a.m. He led me to an unused room at the end of the ward. Inside were lockers filled with uniforms, all mine, same size, same name stitched on the chest, each one dated with a different year. He said some people do not leave, they just forget when they arrived. When morning staff came in, nobody acknowledged him. They asked why I was sitting in a patient chair at the nurse's station. I looked down and saw a wristband on my arm. I tried to explain everything. They smiled gently and said confusion happened sometimes. They told me the night assistant would help me settle in. I looked down the hallway and saw him sitting in the chair again, waiting. The dementia ward had 12 patients, and one rule that nobody questioned. Mrs. Clark and patient 9 were never allowed to sit together under any circumstances. They were assigned to separate wings, scheduled for activities at different hours, and redirected immediately if one wandered too close to the other. No supervisor ever explained the reason behind it. The rule was treated like oxygen protocol or medication timing, something too important to debate and too uncomfortable to analyze. On my 3rd week, we were short-staffed and moving faster than usual. I missed the seating chart and wheeled Mrs. Clark into the common room without checking who was already inside. Patient 9 was sitting near the window, facing the television that was not even turned on. The moment their eyes met, both of them stopped moving completely. Mrs. Clark's constant hand tremor disappeared. Patient 9 stopped humming mid-sound. They straightened in their chairs at the same time, with a level of posture and awareness I had never seen from either of them. Mrs. Clark said a name in a steady voice that did not belong to someone with advanced cognitive decline. Patient 9 answered immediately, just as steady, just as clear. They began speaking in complete sentences, without hesitation or confusion. When I stepped forward to separate them, both reached out and grabbed my arms at the same time. Their grip was firm and controlled, not frantic or weak like I would expect from elderly patients. Mrs. Clark told me calmly to sit down. Patient 9 said I would want to remember what happened next. They spoke to each other like coworkers reviewing a plan. They discussed hallway schedules, door alarms, and how long it would take before anyone noticed something was wrong. They referred to staff patterns and blind spots in camera coverage with unsettling accuracy. They spoke about me as if I were not present in the room. The lights dimmed briefly above us, and the ward went quiet enough that I could hear my own breathing. Patient 9 leaned forward and said forgetting was not a disease, but a form of protection. Mrs. Clark laughed and said I was too young to understand what they were being protected from. I pulled free and ran to get help. When other staff returned with me, both patients were back in their chairs, shaking, confused, and unable to form complete sentences. They looked exactly like they always did. Security footage made the situation worse. On camera, they never touched me at all. I walked forward on my own, pulled up a chair, and sat down calmly in front of them. I requested a transfer that same day and never worked that side of the ward again.